Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're going to be taking an advanced look at the highly awaited Deformation aircraft Crimson Wings, also known as a third-party masterpiece version of G1 Starscream. Now massive thank you to Shozy Store for sending this advanced copy my way here to review, and of course I shall include all of the links down in the description box below where you guys can go ahead and order your own figure, which I believe is scheduled to ship within the next 7 to 14 days, so definitely jump on it sooner rather than later. And also for those of you who are actually long-time viewers of the channel, you guys know that I don't really tend to cover all that many third-party G1 characters on the channel, just because 9 times out of 10 I'm pretty sufficed with the offerings from Takara Tomy. However, this guy caught my attention because he's pretty much less than half the price of the Takara Tomy Starscream, and at least in my personal opinion he is actually better than that previously released masterpiece figure. Now we'll very quickly go over the packaging. You can see very basic in terms of design. We've got this really cool foil image there of Starscream in the jet mode, Crimson Wing Deformation aircraft. If we just set this here off to the side and take a look at some of these accessories, honestly they're fairly minor, although I've always found that some of the accessories that Takara tend to pack in with their figures are pretty useless. So to be fair, this guy comes with pretty much everything I would want. So in addition to the 2 null rays which come standard to the figure, we do in fact get 2 interchangeable faceplates. So we've got here a neutral expression for Starscream as well as a sinister smile, and then mandatory out of the packaging we of course have the classic sinister smirk, which really does look incredible. Now I'll be completely upfront at the beginning of this review, as an overall package I think this guy is exceptional. I really do think he's awesome. He is a lot better than the MP Starscream, and to be fair it's all mainly down to the materials that they've actually used for this guy. As this was a pre-production sample, I didn't receive any form of instructions, so really put the plastic and some of the joints through the test when I was learning the conversion, and oh my goodness, everything has withstand so well, and he feels incredible. He's at least 2 times the weight of the Takara Starscream, and when we bring that guy out later on for a comparison, you'll see that in regards to height, while he is slightly bigger, there really isn't all that much to it. So honestly the plastic they've used on him is exceptional. Now in regards to detail, you can see the face sculpt, at least to me, looks really well done. I love this classic smirk that we've got going on for the character. The paint apps have turned out so nicely. You can see here we've got the air intakes at the top with those tiny little red arrows. As we turn our attention here to the torso, unlike the MP version, this does in fact actually utilize the real cockpit that we'll use for the jet mode. So you can see here really nice orange cast plastic. To be fair, I wish this was slightly more smoky, but considering that it is the real cockpit, I can understand as to why they've gone for a slightly more transparent version. And of course you can see some nice interior cockpit detailing. You can see here for the sides, I think the black detailing all looks really nice. As we turn our attention to the actual arms of Starscream, very thick, very blocky, much like we saw in the original G1 cartoon series. The null rays impeccably sculpted as well as painted, and you can see as we turn our attention down to the forearms, I love the smooth panels that we've got going on, and the finger detailing also is really well done, and every single finger, including the thumb, is in fact individually articulated, and the thumb is definitely an area which I think is a marked improvement when in comparison to the official MP version. As we spin our attention here to the back, you can see that he cleans up pretty impeccably, especially where this back plate is concerned. This is so nicely done. I do actually prefer the wing design that we've got going on for the MP figure, but that's something that I'll discuss later on in the video. And to be fair, these don't look too bad at all. You can see very clean in regards to this backpack, especially here for the base of the legs. As we turn our attention here once again to the front of the figure, you can see the thighs all really nice and streamlined, especially here for the shins. The paint apps looking fantastic, and we do actually get die-cast feet for this guy, which is incredible. Now also one thing worth mentioning is that all of the joints are super tight, super sturdy, and he really does feel incredibly robust. There are no loose or floppy joints on this guy. You can see here that I'm giving him a proper shake, and none of the ratchet joints in the knees or the arms are in fact attaching, which is exceptional. In regards to this guy's articulation, we do in fact get a ball joint here at the head, so this can look down pretty well. You can also extend the neck joint much like the Takara Tomy version. He can of course look up, so I would say about that far. The head can of course tilt side to side ever so slightly, as well as rotate left to right. We do in fact get a butterfly joint here at the shoulder, which is fantastic, so you can see that can indeed bend into quite a significant degree. Of course we can bend this out to 90. We do get a rotation here at the bicep, albeit very stiff. The elbows are in fact on double hinges, so that allows for a terrific range of motion. You can see how you can get a full curl there. The wrists are in fact on a swivel joint, so this can swivel the full 360 as well as hinge back and forth. Sadly, it can't really hinge all that well, which is slightly unfortunate, but he does indeed have a much better range of motion here for the thumb when in comparison to the Takara version, so you really are able to manipulate this around to your own personal desire. You can see how we've got 3 points, so we've got the ball joint, a hinge joint, and a hinge joint there for the base, and the same can also be said here for these ones. However, at the base they are merely just hinge joints instead of ball joints. And one area which is a noticeable difference when in comparison to the Takara version is that we now in fact have a waist rotation. Now to be fair, this was something that didn't bother me a heck of a lot when I actually reviewed that 3.0 version of Starscream, just because in the show Starscream never really uses his waist, and that guy was pretty well articulated, so I didn't really find myself actually needing to utilize it. However, I will be honest and say that actually getting this guy in hand, I have found it to be a blessing. You really are able to pull off some super dynamic poses with this guy, which is really well done. However, with the addition of this, of course, we do get the breakage here at the base of the cockpit, which I know won't be to everybody's taste. However, luckily, it does come pretty flush to actually covering this. So to be fair, I don't really have much of an issue with this, and we also do get an ab crunch due to transformation, although it's not as dynamic as the actual version that we got from Takara, so you can see how it can crunch forwards and backwards, and of course is a much uglier hinge joint due to this section actually being detached. Now in regards to the leg articulation, you can indeed hinge the skirt out of the way to allow for ratchet joints kicking forwards that far, as well as back to, I would say, about that far. He can of course do the splits to an exceptional degree. For rotation here at the thigh, we do indeed get a double joint here at the knee, allowing him to kick himself way up the backside, which is really well done. And then here for the foot, you can in fact wriggle the front toe as well as the intake, although you can indeed take this entire section and utilize this phenomenal ankle rocker joint, so that really does allow him to get into some fantastic poses, and this is also a marked improvement when in comparison to the Takara Tomy version. And just before I forget, this guy also does have a much better range of motion here for the wings, so you are able to hinge these here all the way to the back. You can of course also hinge them up and down to your own personal preference, whereas on that Takara version they were just fixed into place. So that is also something that I personally really like about this guy. Here for that essential Starscream comparison, we've got the DS version on the right as well as the Takara Tomy version on the left, and if I were to be completely honest, I think both of them are really well done figures, especially in robot mode. They both look really awesome, but this version here by DS just does a few things which I know will make many collectors happy that had an issue with this figure. Most noticeably would be the addition of the real cockpit used for robot mode, as well as now the addition of a waist joint. Now for me, as mentioned beforehand, it didn't really bug me all that much with this figure. Just as in jet mode and robot mode, he looked really well done. The addition of a faux piece didn't actually compromise either of the modes, so in regards to that design, it's really going to come down to personal preference. But as we just turn our attention here to the side, the DS version, at least to me, cleans up so much better. Now both of them granted do have some panel lining here on the legs, but that's just inevitable due to the way they transform. I do think the null rays on the DS version look a little better, and just overall I much prefer the lighter colour scheme that we're actually getting with this third party figure, whereas this guy is actually incredibly dark. And then as we just turn our attention here to the back of the figure, which I personally think you guys will see a stark improvement, you can see that this section here I think looks exceptional. I do actually prefer the design here of the MP Starscream wings, but with that being said, here from a side perspective you can see how they are indeed a lot thicker and they do actually have a gap. So there are definitely pros and cons about both of them. If you were in fact able to merge both of them together and get the best of both worlds, you would of course have a perfect Starscream. But to me at least, I think both of them are really good in their own right, and as mentioned beforehand, I really do think that it's just going to come down to personal preference as to what you guys prefer in regards to the colour scheme, and mainly where that torso is concerned, where the cockpit goes. And for another comparison, we've got DS Starscream compared next to the official Takara Megatron. And once again, for those of you who had a critique with the Takara version being too small, seeing as this guy is a little bigger, you may in fact actually find that he scales better with Megatron. Personally, I never really thought scale was an issue with that Takara version, but I guess for those of you who wanted Starscream to be a little bigger, maybe this would be the option to go for. And so, turning to the transformation for this figure, definitely a lot more complex than I was expecting, and a little more intricate when in comparison to the Takara MP 3.0 version. And in some areas, I will be honest and say that I did start to question as to whether or not he was perhaps overcomplicated, and if they could have perhaps simplified and streamlined some areas. But of course, as we go through the conversion, I'll be sure to point out some of those aspects. So to begin with, you're going to want to turn your attention to these null rays and just wriggle them here out of the arms. Now in order to actually transform these, they have actually a really enjoyable conversion. You just want to detach this clip system, bring this here all the way around, rotate this section in, compress the null ray into that cavity, of course collapse it, and there you've got the missiles for the jet mode. Really cool conversion. Of course, come here to this side and repeat the exact same process. So just wriggle this section here off. You'll then want to take this section, just attach that, rotate this section around, compress the null ray, snap that into place, and set that here off to the side. Then we bring the figure in, of course, and you're going to want to turn your attention to the inside of the arms. Just fold this panel out, compress the thumb in like so, rotate this around, and then just snap that section in. Come here to this side and repeat the same process. So collapse the thumb in, pull this panel out, rotate that there into the hollow cavity. We're then going to want to turn our attention here to the wings. Now you're going to want to lift these flaps up. You could really do this later on in the conversion, but personally I like to just get these simpler steps out of the way to begin with. So just fold those out, take these here, hinge them out to the sides just to allow for some clearance, as believe me, there is a lot that goes on here with this back panel. You'll then want to turn your attention here to the legs, once again completing some of the more simpler steps and just folding these tabs out to the side, just like so. Turn your attention to the front of the figure now, and this is where things can become a little tricky. You're going to essentially want to dip this section in, and at the same time try your best to actually raise this panel. Now, to be honest with you, I haven't found a right or wrong way to do it. As I mentioned, I never actually received instructions with him. So what I tend to do is just try my best to dip this section and then just sort of flick this top panel out. And I do wish there was a slightly easier way to do it, as to be honest with you, it's not the best. But once that does become detached, you can of course hinge this here out to the side. I would then recommend bringing in a spudger or a screwdriver just to lift that panel out. And then of course you can just set that section off to the side as well. So let's just hinge all of this up. That will then allow you to take this section, lift and detach these panels here. So just detach that, angle this here to the side, and of course all of this is now going to become detached. You're then going to want to fold these grey sections in just like so, and of course repeat the same process. We can then spin our attention here to the top of Starscream, take this, hinge this all the way to the back, and of course repeat the same process. So hinge this here all the way up to the back. You'll then want to spin your attention to the back of Starscream, take this panel, rotate this here around so that it is now sort of in the middle like so, and then of course just fold this out. And I would recommend leaving it like this for the duration of the conversion until we really begin to tidy everything up towards the end. You'll then want to spin your attention here to the front of the figure. We can then take this region, just bring this forward, angle these panels out just to allow for some clearance, as this entire section is going to spin all the way around just like so. We can then compress that like this, take this section here and just pull this entire section forward, so the head now proceeds to rotate, and the sides of the helmet, much like the MP version, are spring loaded, so you're just going to want to tuck the head into this transformation joint just like so. We can then come to these sections, fold out the tips of the nose cone, rotate, and then just align up appropriately. Of course, come to this side and repeat the same process. So just angle them out, rotate like so, bring these two halves here together and proceed to snap them into place. And then with this particular region, I would recommend lifting this up, as this now has to slide underneath this just like so. And if this isn't up all the way, it will not actually allow for this to dip. Once that's completed, we can then just proceed to straighten all of this up, compress these panels on either side. Sadly, the landing gear panel does have a tendency to just become loose and floppy, so there's not really all that much I can do with that. And then with this section, you'll just want to snap that nose cone there into place. We can then utilize the ab crunch joint that we saw for robot mode, just bring this section all the way forwards, really just to allow for some clearance, as what you'll want to do now is take this, extend this part of the nose cone until it does in fact actually click and lock into place, and you will hear it snap. So just click that in there like so, and then bring these panels together and actually tab them in, as we are going to want to manipulate a few things here. And you can already see how the paint has sadly actually rubbed against this, so try your best to manipulate these wings in a way so that they don't actually come into contact with these chest panels. So just hinge those up, of course come to this side, hinge that section up, and then we can turn our attention to the back of the figure. And this is where you're just going to want to pull all of this here out to the side. Bring all of this down. Just like so. Ensuring that everything is out of the way. Now, once these sections of the wings have now moved past this particular region, that will then allow you to actually split this so that we can begin to compress it. And then you're essentially going to want to collapse this in. Now, with these particular regions, you can see how they are on slider joints. So you're just going to want to slide them forwards until these do in fact actually click into place. Of course, come to this side, repeat the same process. And now you may also be able to tell that we have got a slight circular cutout, as this is in fact going to cup around this hinge joint. So just angle them here out to the side, bring this nose cone section forwards, line that up appropriately, and then with these you're just going to want to rotate these so that that hinge joint does fully sit flush in accordance with those circular pieces. Of course, come to this side and repeat the same process. So just snap them there into place. That will then allow you to straighten this entire back region out. So just bring all of this in just like so. Turn your attention now to the wings. You're going to want to dip this section in. Come here to the ratchet joint, fold that in, and then take this panel, lift this up just to allow for some clearance, as we're now going to want to spin this here all the way around. so that this screw is now facing outwards with this screw. Once that's completed, we can then take this, hinge this down so that we're left with something which looks along the lines of this. Of course, repeat the exact same process here with this side, and personally this is an area which I do actually find to be slightly overcomplicated, so just bring this down once more. Of course, proceed to rotate, and there really isn't a lot of room sadly to actually do this, but just rotate that around and then hinge that up and angle the shoulder joint out like so. We can then proceed to rotate this panel around, and then of course just begin to tidy all of this up so that it's more or less straightened, so that we can then begin to work on the legs. So for the leg transformation, you're going to want to come here to this panel, just detach this like so and angle this down like this. Turn your attention here to the back, take the butt panel, pull this down, collapse these two halves in, and this will in fact come all the way down like so. And you can see how we've got a tab that will peg into this slot, so just snap that in there for now, just like this. Turn your attention to the legs, and you're going to want to take this panel here, detach this like so, pull this section here out. Then you're going to want to rotate all of this kibble all the way around, just like so, and then this here will now slide in to this groove like this. We can then proceed to fold all of these wings out, so just extend everything like this, come to this section, angle this out, rotate these back fins out, and then we're going to want to turn our attention to the foot. You're going to want to rotate the foot around so that you can see this mushroom peg visible and this tiny little hollow space, as that will allow for enough clearance for you to actually detach the foot, enough so that we can then rotate it back around, pull this section forwards, and then you're going to want to take the bottom part of the foot, the top part of the leg, and if I just show you here from the underside, pull this down and it will just extend that, allowing for a lot more clearance, as this is where the arms are in fact going to be facilitated. Once completed, we can then move that hinge joint back into place, rotate the foot around, and this die cast peg will in fact tab into that slot, so just snap that there into place, and of course repeat the exact same process. Now, with both of the legs fully transformed, what we can then proceed to do is just essentially tidy all of this up to prepare to bring this top half into the lower section. So just rotate this around. You'll then want to turn your attention here to these intakes. Just take these and bring them out to the back just to allow for some additional clearance. We can then take these panels and of course snap the two halves together. So just snap that in there. Come to this panel here, snap this section into place, turn your attention to the underside and just ensure that that too is all pegged in. Now what we can then proceed to do is you're going to want to make sure that these panels do stay flush, just like so, with this one risen to the back, as we're now going to take this and with a bit of luck crunch this section in like so, and then the arms should hopefully slide into these slots just like so. Just slide all of that in. We can then take these tiny little tabs, which believe me, when going from jet back into robot are an absolute pain to actually detach, but you're going to want to take them and tab them into place, just like so. We can then spin our attention here to the underside. You're going to want to take this chest piece, snap those two halves together like so, and then we can just turn our attention to the top section of the jet, just ensure that all of these panels are sitting flush, so just tab all of that in. And then for some final steps, we're then going to want to align this up appropriately. Take this here, slide that underneath, and you can see two tabs here and here that will peg into some slots on this section. So just snap these in like so. Of course, come here to this side and then just snap that there into place, ensuring that everything is secured. We can then fold these out. These pieces here are going to extend. We can just compress them like so. Turn your attention here to these wings, of course, compress them in, snap them there into place. Turn your attention to this side and repeat the exact same process. So just snap that into place. And here we have the jet mode for DS Starscream more or less fully completed. However, of course, there are a few finishing touches. So if you just turn your attention here to the underside, fold out this section, you will in fact be able to deploy the landing gear, extend this here all the way down, and then take this panel here, lift this section up, and then these sections here will in fact actually detach, which will then allow you to take these here and just reverse the landing gear outwards, and then just compress that. I wish there was a slightly more simplistic way to just flick this out instead of having to disassemble this and then of course pop the knee pad out, but nevertheless, of course, come to this side and repeat the same process. So just flip that section out, snap that into place, snap that there back into place. We can then take the null rays, or in this instance the missiles, port them here onto the base of the wings, and of course repeat the same process here for this side. And so here we have the jet mode. Now, as mentioned beforehand, I do find the transformation on this guy to be in some areas a little overcomplicated. I do find some pieces to be a little over-engineered, I guess you could say, but it does result in a very nice looking robot mode and a very nice looking jet mode, so I guess I can't really complain all that much. You can see that in regards to detail, the sculpt work, especially going on here for the top, looks really impressive. Now, of course, this tiny little panel should be compressed in, but you can see that the entire top section of this jet has just been completely decked out with some fantastic looking sculpt work. Honestly, this really does give the Takara Tomy version a run for its money. This looks so well done. You can see here that for the cockpit, considering that this was the actual cockpit we saw in robot mode, you can once again see the interior detailing, which I actually think looks really nice. You can see the seat detailing in there, as well as some nice dashboard detailing. As we turn our attention here to the front of the nose cone, this all comes together incredibly nicely. You can in fact actually compress this a little more in order to really close off that panel line, but the sculpt work here from a side perspective looks so well done. And as we actually turn it to a side perspective, you can see that the jet mode for the most part actually folds together and conceals really nicely. If we just remove this missile here off to the side, you can see that from a side perspective he's very clean, and that is of course why the conversion is so complex. So they really have done a commendable job. The only area which I'm not a massive fan of would be perhaps this region. I don't think it looks the best, but it's definitely not the worst, and you can see some nice detailing on the actual undersection there of the wings. As we turn our attention here to the back, they do appear to have gone for toy accuracy in regards to the red and white pinstriping when in comparison to the MP version, which went for full-on toon accuracy, which merely just has the blue colorization. But here from the back, you can see the jets, which look really nice. Of course, you can adjust these round to your own personal preference. As we just turn our attention once again here to this side with the missile attached, I think this looks really nice. And of course, you saw earlier on in the video the landing gear deployed, some pretty decent sculpt work, and of course you can roll along the ground if you so desire. So overall, in regards to jet mode, I think it looks really well done. Definitely a very nice alternate mode in order to accompany a fantastic looking robot mode. So without further ado, let's bring in the MP Starscream for a jet mode comparison, and then of course we shall proceed to wrap up the review. So here for that Starscream comparison, we've got the DS version on the left and of course the MP version here on the right. And really straight off the bat, the only thing that you're really going to notice is the drastic difference in the color. The MP version is a lot darker, and as mentioned in robot mode, I do actually prefer the lighter color scheme that we've got going on here for the DS version. But in regards to actual scale, they are more or less exactly the same. Honestly, length as well as width, they're more or less identical. But if we just give a comparison here from a side perspective in regards to the undercarriage kibble, you can see that, at least in my opinion, I do find that this one cleans up a lot better, especially considering that we don't have any ugliness like we've got here with this. So definitely the DS version is once again looking as if though it is the superior out of the two. And then as I just flip them to the underside, you can see some of the kibble management. So the legs end up in the same place that you would expect, and the torso too does also end up in the same way. But honestly, there's just so much more conversion that actually goes into this guy when in comparison to the actual Takara MP release. So once again here from a side perspective, just so that you guys can see. And then as we just turn our attention here to the top, of course this was loaded with sculpting and detailing, but it didn't have as much as we've got with this version, which honestly once again is more toon accurate, as of course in the original series the models were a lot more simplistic, a lot more smoother. So I can't really complain all that much in regards to the actual detailing that we've got going on for the surface. It once again just comes down to personal preference as to what you guys prefer visually. I think they're both really well done figures. Robot mode for both of them I think are really nice, but each of them have their pros and cons, and as mentioned beforehand, if you were able to merge both of them together, you would of course have the perfect Starscream. But as it stands, I think that both of them overall are probably just as good as one another. Where this one lacks, this one gains, and of course vice versa for the two. And to be fair, I do actually prefer these rear wings that we've got on the MP version, when in comparison to this guys, of course you can see the hinges. But be sure to let me know down in the comment section below, out of these two jets, which is your preferred. And so some final thoughts for the Deformation Space Crimson Wings third-party MP version of Starscream. Overall, I think this figure is fantastic. In regards to robot mode, he looks almost dead on to how he appeared in the original G1 series. Of course, there are some slight differences. Most noticeably would be the colorization. I actually really prefer the lighter tones of grey, red and blue that we've got going on for this guy. But for those of you who perhaps want a more toon accurate version of the character, then perhaps you're best to look at the Masterpiece version. That guy is significantly darker to match what we actually saw on screen. But this guy also has got a lot going on for him. Of course, he's got the addition of the waist joint, which is something that the official version never had, and he also has got the incorporation of the real cockpit used for jet mode implemented into the bot mode, mode, which I know will please many fans and collectors. I also think the materials used for this guy are in a league of their own when in comparison to the materials used on the official Takara Tomy version. This guy feels twice the weight of that figure, and to be fair, in regards to the scale, whilst he is bigger, he isn't that much bigger, so it really does just go to show the quality of this product. Of course, he also has die-cast implemented into him. Most noticeably would be the transformation hinge joint that actually holds the nose cone together, and of course a few various other pieces of die-cast such as in the feet, and I also believe there are some other pieces scattered throughout the figure, but the actual plastic itself is incredibly durable. As mentioned, considering this was a pre-production sample, I had this sent to me with no instructions, and I really put this figure through it. There were multiple times where I thought I was going to break a piece, but nope, everything held up impeccably well, so that really is once again just a prime example of how well made this figure is. The transformation, of course, I'm not going to lie, it's a nightmare. It's definitely a lot more sophisticated when in comparison to the MP version, and there's really no fun aspect about it, to be fair, but it does result in a very nice looking jet mode, which overall I actually think is better in design when compared to the Masterpiece version. It cleans up a lot better, especially where the undercarriage is concerned, and once again, it's very, very nicely detailed. But then saying that, if you want for a more toon accurate version with less detail and more smooth panels, then perhaps you are best looking at the official version. So it really does just come down to personal preference as to what you guys want from a Starscream figure. One thing to mention though is that this guy is in fact less than half the price of the official version, and to be honest with you, I think he's twice the quality. He's a really, really well made release. All of the ratchet joints, all of the hinge joints are incredibly stiff. There are no QC issues that I can find, at least on my copy, and whilst he doesn't come with as many accessories as that official version, I think he comes with pretty much everything you would want for a base Starscream figure. Some of the most recent Takara MP figures really are just throwing random accessories into the mix, which 9 times out of 10 no collectors are going to display with their figures in order to increase the price point, whereas this guy I think comes with everything. We get the null rays as well as a few different facial expressions, which overall I think is more than enough. So with all that being said, if you are looking to add this guy to your collection, he is currently available and in stock right now over at Shozy's store, and for that of course I will include a link down in the description box below. I'd love to know down in the comment section below what you guys thought of the review as well as the figure, and out of the two, which Starscream do you think is the best, the Crimson Wings or of course the official version from Takara Tomy? I thank you all for watching, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.